Bases dropped on a Power Hour edition of SDH. El Clasico has kicked off. We will not be giving you play-by-play of El Clasico. There's contractual things you have to worry about with those sorts of things. We will tell you that Barcelona are starting multiple teenagers, and one of them is Serginho Dest of the United States men's national team. This is a pressure-packed Clasico, I think, for both. Maybe a little bit less for Barcelona now, with getting a win in Champions League in the midweek. Real Madrid lost in the league last weekend. They lose in the Champions League in kind of a shocking way in midweek. And Zinedine Zidane, I think, is feeling the pressure a little bit more than Ronald Koeman, which is not what we thought would be the case a week ago. That's how crazy things can turn. We'll get into Atlanta and D.C. this morning as well. That kickoff will be just after 4 o'clock this afternoon. And we'll look at the rest of the MLS slate as it comes. Nashville and New England delayed by about an hour and a half last night due to storms. 1-1 draw. Kind of felt like the right result. Nashville wasn't good enough to get the win. New England was good enough to take a point out of it. Things on El Clasico. What were the numbers? I don't know if you had them beforehand, before it kicked off. What were the numbers looking like on this one?
I will effort them quickly.
No, don't worry about it. No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It'll take you 20 minutes. And if the game's already started, so it really doesn't matter. I was just curious where the numbers had shifted all week. A lot of the question marks coming in. One, the young players for Barcelona. How are they going to respond? Real Madrid gets Sergio Ramos back into the team. No Antoine Griezmann to start for Barcelona. Are you looking at, of course, a Lionel Messi in this game, but are you looking at a Vinicius for Real Madrid, who could be the one that flips this game on its head? Messi nearly gets on the end of one. So it's going to be a fun one to watch. First half will be during our show, then the second half you can watch on Fanatis on BN Sports. fntz.co/soccer down here. There goes John with his slashing. If you want to get signed up, you can get a free trial. You could actually sign up, get a free trial. You could watch El Clasico today if you want to do that, if you're not already a subscriber. All right, Atlanta and D.C. Rumor out there about Fernando Meza, and this came out of Mexico last night. I think, John, you have the source on this one?
El Imparcial. And it's an article by Heriberto Munoz, and this is translated. So, quoting Munoz, another area that Xolos want to reinforce is defense. They go for Fernando Meza of Atlanta United. The 30-year-old Argentine central defender is a, quote, ace up the sleeve of the Rojinegros and was involved in an atypical moment. They signed him from the Cox at the beginning of 2020, registered, sent him to Atlanta United at the same time they bought LGP from the same team.
Yeah, we knew that part. It's just like, wait, what? They picked up his rights in Mexico. There's some different things that go on with the Mexican market that's a little interesting. It's not as crazy as MLS with total player rights being held by teams if they leave the league, but it's along those lines. Now, what they say in this article is that they still have a portion of his player pass. That is the part we don't know. And if they do, that doesn't mean they have control, but it could mean essentially like a first right of refusal or whatever. And Real Madrid has already scored in El Clasico in the 5th minute. This could get really interesting. They have a portion of his pass, according to this article. We don't know how much. We don't know if there are any other options or things that were done in that transfer when Atlanta bought him from Xolos. Not from Necaxa, from Xolos. His rights moved to Xolos. They made the deal. So it's a little complicated, and there's a lot we don't know. A couple things we do know are that he can't go to Mexico right now. Like he's here for the rest of the season because their transfer window closed on September 5th. I don't think there's any loophole because he is registered with another country, so it's not even that if they had any kind of rights on him, they could bring him back outside of the window. His international transfer certificate is in the United States. So he is here through the rest of the season. But could they bring him in January? Yeah, I mean, that was always a possibility that anybody could. You look at Xolos and why they would potentially want to do that, they're in 14th place. They've only scored 10 goals this season. They've allowed 21, which isn't horrible, but isn't great. Especially it's not great when you've only scored 10, and you're the worst scoring team in Mexico this season. So, is this a shock? No, not really. It makes a little more sense why they picked him up now from Necaxa in Mexico before moving him here. Basically, it was, we want to control his rights in Mexico. We don't need him right now because we're bringing in Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez, but we might want to bring him back at some point. No idea what the financials would look like on anything like this. So this is a move for next year. I think there was some general confusion about what it could look like in terms of timing, but unless things have changed from what FIFA has posted, and it's always possible that it has, the Mexican transfer window is closed. They only have, I think, 3 more matches, including this weekend, in league play before they go into the Liguilla. So I don't think he's going anywhere the rest of this year.
Yeah, the quote from a source close to the organization's quote is, "They go for Meza." So we'll see what happens here. And
that's really adding a lot. That's brilliant. Well, it's just saying that that's the guy that they've picked, that they've identified they want to go get. There's nothing to that.
And to answer your question, Real Madrid ended at a plus 300 at kick to win today.
Man, well, I hope some people liked that early goal then. Valverde with the goal. Pretty poor defending from Barcelona. Not a shot. Yeah. All right, let's get caught up on everything in the Twitch pitch. John's mic is low. I'll boost that up because if he tries to fix it, there's no telling what'll happen.
Exactly.
That'll help at least some, and hopefully it doesn't get too distorted. Ropes wants to know if we can get LGP back from Miami. And Barcelona scores, so it's 1-1 in the 9th minute. I don't think you need LGP back from Miami, Ropes, and you say it yourself. You're good at center back with Miles Escobar, Walks, and Jeff, and Campbell as well. I don't know if Jeff will be back in that scenario, but I think Escobar becoming a center back is what changes the equation here a little bit. And Miami wouldn't just give up LGP, but if you've watched Miami, he's been good, but his play slipped over the time he was in Atlanta. I don't think he's better right now than he was last year in Atlanta. And last year in Atlanta, he wasn't as good as he was in the previous years in Atlanta. So, it happens. It's not like he's an older player, but just, form dips, other people pass you, things like that. You're not going to pay a bunch of crazy money to Miami to get him back when you already made the decision that you would sell him in the first place. I think with Escobar at center back and Lennon at right back, that gives you the best setup that you want. If you go into next season with a lineup like Bello, Robinson, Escobar, Lennon across the back line, a new number 6, because I think that's going to be a necessity, or an improved 6 out of some of the different options you have, I think you're going to go to a new number 6. Then somebody with Marcelino Moreno, and that could be Josetu, that could be Hindman. In some matches, that could be an Adams, that could be a Remedi. You could go more defensive at times when you need to. You could also go more offensive at times when you need to. And then you look at Jurgen Damm out wide on one side, Ezequiel Barco on the other, and Joseph Martinez up top. That feels like a very different lineup than what we've seen the majority of this season due to injuries and due to all of the craziness of 2020. So I'm good with that lineup going forward. I think Escobar and Lennon, the ability to play Lennon at right back, gives you more than bringing in another center back and playing Escobar at right back. I think Lennon can be more dynamic as a right back.
No, right there with you. The way that you break down that perspective starting 11 next year, I really like that lineup and what it can be next season for an Atlanta United with that layout.
And forgot Lawrence Wyke as well as depth at center back. He's another possibility there, although he can play kind of all over the back line and in the holding midfield. You're going to need depth. As we've seen this year, it is important. Depth has kept Atlanta afloat this season. If you were like some teams and you didn't have the depth that you've had, you would not be in line for a potential playoff spot. So it is what it is. You've got to keep guys healthy as best you can, but you want people who can step in and do enough of the job as a reserve. It's not easy to balance.
No, and having, you mentioned depth, and having the depth that we've been able to see this season for Atlanta United gives you a lot of promise for when everyone's healthy and you can have the lineup. You can have that starting 11 that you're talking about, plus the folks that we've seen develop this season, with an Anton Walks being a part of that discussion as well.
Yeah, I mean, Walks, I think, developed more at Portsmouth while he was away from Atlanta, and he's a different player now. So, I mean, he's still young. He's more mature than he was when he was here last time.
Yeah.
He's just come in and done the job. You will have to figure out playing time for Campbell. I think Campbell needs to play somewhere, and I don't know if it's necessarily Atlanta United too, unless you feel like you have to have him around for extra depth at the MLS level. I'd love to see him get more minutes somewhere and be a regular somewhere for his development to continue. This was a crazy year. I don't think you can have another one where he doesn't see the field a ton. Matt Wagner says, I guess we may be shopping for center backs too. I don't think so. Honestly, I don't. If you go into next year and you've decided, and we don't know if they have or not, if you decide that it's Robinson and Escobar as your two center backs, that's your primary two, and you've got Walks, and you've got Wyke, and you've got Campbell as your depth. Now, if you move Campbell on loan elsewhere to get minutes, consistent minutes, then you might want one more depth piece. And maybe you go with a veteran depth piece there. Somebody who, isn't expecting to play every day, but can come in when needed, give guys a break when the schedule gets compressed, these kinds of things. Maybe that's what you're looking for there. But I don't think you're looking for a starter if you've made the decision on Escobar at center back. And I've loved what I've seen from Escobar at center back. It allows you to play Lennon at right back, because otherwise you're going to have to figure out how to squeeze Escobar at right back, Lennon at right back or right wing, and Jurgen Damm at right wing, and you're going to play two of the three. You can't get all three of them on the field at the same time if Escobar's not at center back. I think you want to get all three of them on the field at the same time.
Yeah, and to your point about Escobar at center back, I think that to see him at center back, he's you still get the emotion, but at the same time he feels more locked in or controlled or whatever the proper phraseology is. He's just seems to be just really focused and locked in on the task at hand. Yes, he'll bounce forward if he sees that opportunity, but at the same time, I think that you're seeing a more controlled Franco Escobar, and I have seen more slide tackles from him in the last handful of matches, and for me, it's a lovely thing to see. You see him going in, the confidence that's there, and all that kind of stuff. I just enjoy it.
Slide tackles are not a good thing, John. You don't want to have to make a slide tackle.
I know, because that means that you're having to track defensively. But,
well, it means you're putting risk on, because when you go to ground, you are running the risk of getting beaten far more, and you're also running the risk of committing a foul that would see a card far more. So I don't want him making a bunch of slide tackles. I think that there's something that I want to clarify, because I think it gets a little complicated in that conversation. Franco Escobar going forward is a good thing. There is never a negative about Franco Escobar going forward. You still want him to do that from center back when he can. That's not the issue with him playing at center back. He doesn't go forward as much. No, that's not the conversation. The conversation is he has a different level of composure as a center back because he's in more of an organizing role. Right. And the organizing role suits him really well, because then I think he manages kind of his emotions a little bit better, because it's not just about him bombing up and down the right. It is about him organizing the back line. And the Red Bulls match, I thought, was a prime example of this, where he was the leader on that back line. He was the one who was pointing out where to go, who to get, who's got this guy. He was the one doing all that. That, I think, changes the game for him, and he doesn't get as hot, as riled up at times, which has led him to some cards. I don't care about cards in the run of play. I don't care about tactical fouls. I don't care about hard fouls that see a yellow. I don't care about that. I don't like dumb cards, and generally, not always, but generally, where you pick up a yellow card for extra dissent is just an unnecessary one. Those are the ones that are a problem, and when he's at center back, you don't have that happen. You do still want him to go forward from time to time, though. You want him to be able to step up and dribble through pressure at times, and that's another element he gives you at center back.
As he continues in his career with Atlanta United, as his game continues to evolve, could you see him wearing the captain's armband at some point?
Yeah, 100%. There's no question about that for me. we'll see what happens going forward with Jeff Larentowicz and Brad Gazan as the two captains of this team. I don't know if you necessarily want Brad to be your regular captain just because of being in goal. Some teams it works, some teams it doesn't. I don't know if that's the best thing for this group or not. I like to have somebody on the field wearing the armband. Doesn't mean that Brad's not a leader in the group and off the field and preparing for matches. All those things don't change. It's just, does he need the armband? Somebody like Franco Escobar could be elevated by the armband. And that's what you see at times. You can also see it weigh somebody down. And sometimes you see a young player get the armband and they're not necessarily ready for that. And it negatively affects them. I get the sense with Franco that it would elevate him and it would elevate his play, because from what we've seen with the move to center back and how it changes his demeanor because he's in an organizing role as well as doing what he does on the field, having the armband would, in a lot of ways make him even more of an organizer in those scenarios. So I think it would be a good thing for him and get even more out of a player who has looked really good this season when he's played at center back.
You mentioned, since we're talking a little bit about Atlanta United here, Kefsey with a question in the Twitter timeline this morning. Mm-hmm. Give me the number of saves Goose has to make, and why is it 1?
Yeah, we talked about that last night on the run-up. You weren't with us. You missed that. I think it's more than 1. We're taking the over on that, and okay. I'm going to go 2 or 3.
Okay. And Chris Ashley has some League One stuff, and Nathan Pugh is in this morning with Premier League when we get to that point.
Okay. All righty then.
I figured we're sticking with Atlanta United. When we get to the other topics, we'll talk about them.
Sure, we got an hour, so we got to speed through stuff.
Yeah, really.
Couple other things on Atlanta United from the Twitch pitch. Shiva says Meza did not even have time to learn English like he promised us. We don't know. Nobody's asked him a question in Spanish yet. That was what he said. He wanted somebody to ask him a question in Spanish, and then he would try to answer in English. And I have not heard anybody try to ask him a question in Spanish yet. So I don't know if that's true, Shiva. I'm not sure. He hasn't been available. Actually, no, he was available somewhat recently. And I don't think anybody asked him a question in Spanish, any of the English-speaking media anyway. So maybe he learned it on the fly. We just don't know. Let's see. Abby asks who else is not playing today other than Joseph. The only one we know for sure is Edgar Castillo. He is out for today. Escobar doesn't sound great for today, but he wasn't ruled out yet. So he could play today, but it didn't sound all that promising in the media availability on Thursday. Jason Nix says, Meza is clearly made of paper mache and is no good for the kick him in the leg league known as MLS. I don't know. I think he was actually healthy for a little while, and Anton Walkes was just playing better. And Stephen Glass liked the combination of Robinson and Walkes and stuck with it. I think Meza's been fine this year. I haven't had a problem with Fernando Meza's play. He seemed a little flat in the MLS's back tournament, which a lot of different players around the league did at different points. So, it's hard to go at him too hard there. I think Meza has been good. But if somebody wants to come in and pay you money and you've decided that you like the Robinson-Escobar combination, well, then problem solved. And that's what you do. It's what happens sometimes. Jason Nix, Franco's hair is better than LGP's this year. No debate necessary. 100%. He's let the hair grow out. It gives him a different feel altogether as a player. So, the hair grows out. He becomes more composed. Things get weird in 2020 when Franco
stayed
Escobar.
with one color.
What's wrong with that? Why you got to hate on that?
Maybe the multiple colors have distracted LGP this year.
No.
Franco's locked into that one color. He's locked in on the pitch.
No, the multiple colors have not distracted LGP this year. That doesn't even make any sense. As somebody who has previously dyed their hair when they had hair, don't diss people who dye their hair. It's fun.
I did it too.
It's
I did
fun.
it once.
You did?
Yeah. I went it went from blonde to like an 8RB for those that know, like the L'Oreal, the L'Oreal color schemes. No, I did it one. There was a friend of mine who was fighting cancer at the time, and I did it as a way to support. So I matched her hair color.
But what color did you go to? Is what I'm asking.
Basically, this really electric red.
Did it actually work?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, your hair's blonde, so you could dye it more easily than I could with dark hair.
So yeah, it ended, and it was like 3 months. I didn't realize how long it was going to stay that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was this one time where literally it was just bright red.
Nice. I bleached my hair quite a few times. I had the very unfortunate luck of having a very short haircut, kind of like LGP right now, and bleaching my hair blonde. And then about 2 weeks later, this song came and hit and became the biggest song in the country by this white rapper named Eminem, who looked the exact same, and everybody started calling me Slim Shady, and I hated it. Hated it and shaved my head. Wanted no part of that. Rope says, I really want to see Escobar and Miles at center back more, hopefully against a better scoring team like Orlando. Yeah, I like that pairing. Wagner says he needs to be at center back, more composed, smarter at center back. Totally agree. Ropes with a score update. Palace is up 1-0 on Fulham.
Second minute.
Okay. Why are you're pointing at that because it's on a TV somewhere?
It's on a TV somewhere.
Okay, got it. You're watching Crystal Palace and Fulham over Real Madrid and Barcelona?
No, Real Madrid and Barcelona's off over to this side.
Okay, just checking. I was like, that's kind of crazy.
No, it's easier for me to look at Barcelona and Real Madrid than it is for me to look at Crystal Palace and Fulham as it should be.
Okay. Yeah, no offense, Ropes and John. I do not have Crystal Palace and Fulham on anywhere near me right now with El Clasico on in front. Yep. Hutcho, slide tackles are beautiful when done properly. I totally agree. It's the last resort move. And you don't want to be in the last resort move. That's the problem. You want to be able to defend well enough to where you don't have to go to ground in those situations. J-Dub asks how good Escobar's English is. I don't know. I'm trying to remember times where he might have spoken English or tried to speak English. Messi almost scored. We talked to him at the Delta event last year. Mena and I from 92.9 did a little interview with him, and he tried a little bit at the beginning, not with an interview, just to talk to us, and it was difficult for him. So I don't think it's very strong. But in terms of organizing in the back, I think he knows enough of the terminology to do that, because you're not having a debate when you're in that situation when you're on the field. This game is wild, by the way, in El Clasico. You just really want to put it on, is what I'm telling you. Yeah. Because there's been chances going up and down the field. It is so open. And as I'm saying, there's been chances everywhere. There's a ball played over the top, and Courtois has to come way out of his box. Craziness. Anyway, he doesn't have to speak a lot of English to be an organizer in the back. I think he can do it with basic terms and stuff. And he's probably a lot better than me at it. He might understand it fairly well, just doesn't feel comfortable enough to speak it, because those are two different things. Like I can listen to somebody talk about soccer in Spanish and know what's going on. I can read it really well now. I learn new words every day, it seems like, especially with the Argentines. But I can't think in it fast enough to speak it very well. That's the problem I have. Let's see. Ropes. Escobar can improve on some big switch passes. It's funny you mentioned that. And I wanted to jump into this because this has been an ongoing conversation about Atlanta United this season, is that, well, now that they don't have LGP, they don't switch the ball well enough, they don't switch the ball enough, they've lost that part of their game. A couple things. They are second in the league in switches with over 23 per game. I'd have to go back and look at previous years to see if it's possible to find it, but they're second in the league in this. When you look at who the players are who are doing it, Escobar's the number one guy of the regulars. Seventh in Major League Soccer with over 4 switches per game. And these are defined as a little different than just long passes, just passes that are over 25 yards. Escobar and Robinson are in the top 20 in MLS in switches per game, both with over 4. Lawrence Wyke has a bunch per 90 minutes, but that's kind of the situations he's been in. Hosetu and Meza are the next two. Hosetu's the other one that I think would catch people by surprise. His statistical output this year has been good. He hasn't been on the field regularly. I thought he was actually good in a very deep-lying role on Sunday, which surprised me a little bit. But that's where the game was at that point. You felt like you had a chance to go win it. You wanted to get a little more attack-minded in a holding midfield role. You brought on Josetu. He was good defensively, but he also could help spark the team going forward. He has that good long passing element to his game, and they can switch. So the switches are still being done maybe more than before, and Escobar's doing them more than before. He's 7th in the league.
And yeah, as you're reading that stuff, I mean, now that you think about it, as you kind of process what you're seeing, yeah, that does make sense that you're seeing that. But until you sit there and quantify it for me or qualify it for me, yeah, it's like now that you mention it, yeah, you do see those kinds of things.
No, I disagree. It's the narrative is that it's not happening. If you're watching, you see it. I mean, I've noticed that with Escobar all year long. I didn't need to look at the number. Like, I've noticed that with Escobar and Robinson all year long. But the conversation that I'm seeing a lot from a lot of different people talk about this team on a regular basis is that they don't switch the point of attack anymore, and they don't have those big switches out of the back. They do.
Yeah.
They're still there. No, they're still there. Never mind. I don't know what you're doing. You're confusing me because you said you didn't know it until I said the numbers. I'm telling you it was there all along. It's just been talked about as not being there. That's the whole point, and I think that affects how you see things because that's not something everybody's looking for. It's something I look for because it's something that has been a big part of this team from day one. So I wanted to make sure with LGP gone that it was still continuing. Meza brought that early on. Escobar has grown in that role, and Robinson has grown in that role as the year's gone on. So it hasn't felt different for me because I've been looking for those moments. But when the narrative is you're not doing it, you're not doing it, you're not doing it, people think you're not doing it because it's not a major part of the game that you're studying on a regular basis. But it's happening. I mean, it's two guys in the top 16. Escobar 7th and Robinson 16th, both over 4 per game.
No, but just what I was trying to say was it's like it's not a part of the game that I sit there and I write down on a piece of paper and quantify. But as you mentioned it, I haven't seen this narrative that Atlanta isn't doing all of these big switches. So for me, no, I just haven't seen it. So for me, it's just I've always understood and accepted that, yes, Atlanta United is doing all these big switches, and I'm seeing different guys do it. The fact that you're mentioning it to me just reinforces in my brain that, yes, I was seeing what I was seeing. That's all I was saying.
Okay. Burns says, I'm not convinced the back line of Bello, Robinson, Escobar, and Lennon is dramatically better at playing out of the back than what we have seen this year. The 6 and the 8 would have to be at Nagby level to bail them out regularly. Still believe in our inability to play out is causing a lot of the problems this season. Burn, we've had the conversation a bunch of times. I disagree with you. I think the midfield's been the bigger problem this season, not the back line. Not playing out of the back. It's been playing into the final third. That's the issue for me. I actually think that back line would be better playing out of the back. And you do need the 6 to be connected to it, absolutely. But no, I don't know. I disagree with you. I don't think your giveaways are happening as much from your back line. I think your two biggest issues in playing out of the back are once you get into the midfield, that's where I've had an issue multiple times, and from Brad Gazan at times. He's had some games where his distribution has been very poor, and he's played it into that central channel that drives me crazy because when your outside backs are up high, you can't play into the hole at midfield. You can't play to the kickoff spot. Because if you underhit it, you're dead. You've killed the team. That's a ball that there's no need to risk. The ball out wide that if he overhits it and it goes out for a throw, that's fine. I don't care. I'd rather at times maybe look for that longer down the diagonals to give Dom or Gallagher or Barco a chance to get on it. But I think it's more in the midfield where the problems have been playing out of the back. I don't think it's the actual back line. I do think the goalkeepers had some issues with playing out of the back at times. But we'll see. I don't know what you want that would change that because you're not going to move on from any of those players this year going into next year. If you make the decision that you want Escobar at right back and Meza at center back, I don't know if that gets better. In terms of playing out of the back. And that's really the only other option here because I don't see them adding a defender with what you already have. The 6, it does affect if you decide, you know what, we need a little bit extra support here. We need somebody who can not just be a pivot point to play out of the back and play to him and they play back to the back line, but you want somebody who can turn and run, turn and go, and split lines with passes and on the dribble themselves. That could affect the personality of the number 6 you're going to get. But I don't think you're going to change your back line up because I don't think that's the issue either. Brad Gazan's distribution needs to be more consistent next year as well. Needs to eliminate those passes into that middle channel where you can get crushed if your outside backs have pushed up.
Nick Brawley's in this morning, and he asks, what's the chances we may see a full 90 from Barco, Moreno, and Dom tonight? Normally I'd say good, but with the game on Wednesday, maybe it's doubtful. For normally, in a schedule where we don't have a midweek match.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen because you do play on Wednesday, and then you play again next weekend. And I just don't know if you want to push that with them, even if you didn't play Wednesday because of where they're coming from. Fitness-wise. Also, hopefully, you don't need to because you take care of this game and you control it like you did last time you played this team, and you're able to get guys off the field a little earlier. That's what I think could affect it as much as anything. You got to get this stuff done. You've got to take care of this game as early as possible. You don't want to be sweating it in the final 30 minutes. You need to be able to cool off a little bit early because of all the games you're playing in a short period of time.
For me, it is that early control is my concern. With a young team, the longer that you keep a young team in a match like this, their confidence grows. I think that Atlanta United can't give up the goal, obviously, like we've seen the first 15, 20 minutes. But if you assert that early control over DC United, then you should have the match in your hands.
I think we're beyond control. You got to get goals. Control is great. If you're controlling the game like you did against Toronto, you're still sweating it in the final 30 minutes.
Right.
You need goals today. You need to put the game away early. That's where you're at right now. Like in a perfect world, you're looking at controlling games because if you control games in the postseason, you're going to win more games if you're controlling them. You're always running the risk of getting counterpunched. You're always running the risk of a goal against the run of play. But if you're in more control, you're going to win more games. The problem is this team's not scoring a ton of goals. So I will trade all day, every day right now, 3 goals against the run of play, then controlling the game but only winning 1-0 and scoring late. Because this team needs to get goals early so they can rest a little bit in the game and also build some confidence.
Yeah. Juice box adjustment now Halloween candy adjustment has Atlanta United at a minus 141.
Adjustment from what?
Was less than that. It was closer to it's moved like 10 points basically since yesterday. It was in the 130s and now it's in the 140s.
Okay. I did not write down where they were yesterday, so I didn't know which way it adjusted. I'm like,
DC United has moved higher toward plus 380 now.
Okay, got it. Burns says, I watched Stuttgart yesterday. They're a well-coached, young team, lots of internationals, control the ball well, but also switch to vertical real fast, exactly how I would like Atlanta to play. They should hire Pellegrino Matarazzo. Maybe Mercedes-Benz can help with the buyout. Yeah, it would definitely be a buyout. I don't know if he would want to leave the Bundesliga right now. It feels like he would want to stay and continue to grow there at the moment because he's already got his foot in the door. If he somehow became available, yeah, I think he'd have to be on the list if he'd be interested. I don't know, where he's at now. And I think this has come up with David Wagner as well. Like, would those guys be interested in a move to MLS coming from where they'd be coming from? At this point in their careers, I don't know if they would. It'd be great, but I don't know if they would be interested by the job.
So when you look at guys like Matarazzo and Wagner, if you're already there in the European theater, then I would think that that's your first impulse, is that you want to try to figure out a way to stay over there unless there's an overt attraction to come to MLS.
Yeah. Karen Gell says those crosses or switches, and I'm not talking about crosses as much as like longer passes out of the back. They've been happening. It's just that not much has come out of them, and that's a fair point for sure. I think Dom is the only one who will usually take advantage of them. Lennon has as well when he's been up higher in the formation, but yeah, Dom is the one that now with what you have in the attack, you have potentially the speed of Jürgen Damm on one side. You have the speed of Marcelino Moreno through the middle or out to the left. And then you have Barco checking back, wanting to get the ball on his feet. So you have some different things going on in that more front 3-4 that can give some different options for these big switches, for these long changes to the point of attack. So you need to utilize those a little bit more. I agree. It's been not so much that they haven't been happening. I think that's been incorrect. It's that they haven't been as effective because of what happens on the other end, because of the issues going into the final third. That's where the hang-up is. So they're connecting. They're just not productive. And that's not on the actual long pass or the switch. It's on going into the final third and the players going into the final third. That's been more of the issue. Shiva says, so would a Meza transfer open up a spot for Eric Lopez? Shiva. Oh, man, Eric Lopez. I hadn't heard about Eric Lopez in a while. He'll be with the team next year. Meza can't go anywhere right now. I think the way this has been talked about has already been confusing. The Mexican transfer window is not open. They only have 4 games left, including this weekend. He can't go to Mexico right now. This would be for next season. He could move in January, and Lopez will already be part of the team next year. So I was waiting for somebody to tie Eric Lopez into the conversation for a few days, and it hasn't happened until this one. But no, the way this is being talked about, he can't go right now. The transfer window's not open in Mexico, because it's not about the league you're leaving. It's about the league that you are going into. The window has to be open for you to go inside the building, is the way to think about it. And in Mexico, that window closed back in September, so he can't leave.
Nick is back in. He says, growing up in New Jersey, watching the Metro Stars / Red Bulls slowly become unrecognizable compared to what they were when I was a kid. I'm happy to see Atlanta have a special energy about them that gives me confidence for the future.
Yeah, I think when there's been some overreactions this year about a lesser season, there's been a lot of talk about identity. There's a lot of examples of teams that have either never had an identity or have lost their identity over a period of time. One season is a very short sample size. One season in the midst of a global pandemic is a hard thing to compare to any other season. And one season in the midst of a global pandemic where you've lost your leading scorer in the second half of the first game, you haven't had that happen, period. It's hard to throw that into the conversation about losing the club's identity without really including those other elements. That's why I don't think you can even go there right now. Burned about Matarazzo. You'd have to throw a lot of money at him. Young Bundesliga coaches don't make that much money. That's a good point. I did not know that. That's why many are trying to get to the EPL or a mega club like Klopp or Tuchel. But would he feel like he'd get there faster if he stayed? And that's what I would assume that he would. I could be wrong. He could be tempted by a lot of money, and if you get a Mercedes-Benz involved and do some kind of partnership like that, then, yeah, we're having a very different conversation. But I don't know if he'd even be willing to leave Stuttgart right now. That's, I think, maybe the bigger point is I just don't think he'd be available. I do want to see what happens with him long-term. Of course, as anybody from the United States who does anything in Europe, you already start talking national team, whether it's a coach or a player. And I'm sure his name will be talked about in that regard. I saw that Jesse Marsch talked about how he'd love to manage the national team at some point here this week. I don't know if Greg Berhalter appreciated those comments right now, but yeah. I saw that and I was like, whoa, okay, we're already going there, huh? It's just part of the gig. I think he'll chase bigger, higher profile opportunities and maybe bigger, higher profile leagues at the moment. But could he become available at some point? Absolutely. Would the Red Bulls try to snap him up, though? Would be my question, because isn't he a Jersey guy? Yeah. I think so. I could see them trying to get him. I think he could fit into what they want to do. If not him, maybe in New York City could try to go after him. Philadelphia, if Jim Curtin ever left, maybe they'd go after him. I don't know if they could pay as much. It'd be interesting, though. These hypotheticals are fun sometimes to dig into.
PointsBet came out with their updated odds for MLS Cup here in 2020.
Yep.
Atlanta United is tied for 18th with Chicago at plus 7,500.
Okay.
Below Atlanta United, this is when you get into five figures. Houston at plus 15,000. Montreal and San Jose at plus 20,000, along with Nashville at plus 20,000. DC United at plus 30, along with Vancouver and FC Cincinnati at plus 40,000.
Well, where's Miami?
Miami is above Atlanta, so let's see, 18. They're tied for 15th at plus 6,600 with Red Bulls and Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, that's...
now here's... go. Okay, this is really dumb.
Okay.
The Galaxy are at plus 4,000.
Okay, where's Philadelphia?
Philadelphia is 4th or tied for 3rd at plus 700 with LAFC.
That might be the one I would throw juice boxes on right now. Who's their number one? Toronto?
Seattle plus 450. Toronto 2nd at plus 550.
Yeah, I like Philly. I would go. I'd throw something on Philly. Ragamuffin talking about Matarazzo. Would the fan base accept him? There were a lot of folks who immediately didn't like FDB because he wasn't from South America. Oh, I really don't like that narrative at all. And I think if you guys have ever listened to me talk about soccer, I love South American soccer. I love the Argentine League. I'm also not putting blinders on and saying that's the only manager you can go hire, and I don't think this club should either. It's a problem if that's going to be the narrative. That should not be the narrative. They should accept a good manager for being a good manager. And I don't even know. I don't know why that would even be the case. I mean, I can't think of a club in the world that would have that kind of mentality, to be perfectly honest. I mean, even your clubs like a Chivas Guadalajara that only plays players eligible for the Mexican national team doesn't only hire managers in that scenario. Athletic Bilbao, who only plays Basque players, they've had Marcelo Bielsa. They've hired from outside the region. Even Barcelona, who has a thing with Dutch managers and Spanish managers and people from their system, they've went outside the system a little bit at times. Now, there's been a few questions there, but Tata Martino wasn't fully embraced in Barcelona because he wasn't of the Barcelona school, or he wasn't Dutch, or he wasn't Spanish. So maybe Barcelona's your comparison, and I don't know if that's where you want to be with some of these limitations right now. Atlanta should not have those limitations. I disagree. And I'm not saying you're saying that, Ragamuffin. I'm saying that should not be a narrative. That should not be a conversation. If the manager is good enough to do the job, I don't care where they're from, to be perfectly honest. Go ahead.
Nathan Pugh, his Premier League thought of the day. He says, most Liverpool fans in the UK are boycotting the pay-per-view match today. I'm still writing my 60-day Peacock trial, so I'm not paying to watch the match. I'd say this is bizarre, but it is 2020.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just where things are going. These rights have value to people, and this is a very different situation than the Fox Sports South, Fox Sports Southeast, Fox Sports North, Fox Sports Kansas City. Those are the three that I know of off the top of my head. This is a very different situation. This is somebody who bought the rights and has decided to put some of them behind a paywall to get people to pay for their subscription service. They feel like that's going to be the best way to maximize revenue. The conversation for leagues, teams, etc., who have these properties, they're going to have to make that decision over what is the best deal in terms of access and what is the best deal in terms of financial impact. And it's easy to say that it should always be about access, nothing else, then just put the games on public television. I don't think there's a league in the world that does that. There's no team in this country that does that. Why? Because it's a necessary financial component. Now it's more necessary than ever. So the Premier League took this deal with NBC. NBC had the option to do what they're doing with Peacock. They did. The ESPN. It's funny how people have reacted to NBC because they pulled games and put them to Peacock, even more so than like NBC Gold or whatever it was, which was always a pay-per-view
Gold,
thing. And they didn't put a lot of big games there. They've pulled some games that maybe they would have shown on NBCSN in the past, and they've put them on Peacock. People have ripped NBC to shreds on it, but if you are a Bundesliga fan, for example, this year, I haven't seen criticism. And Fox had a bunch of games of Bundesliga on FS1 and FS2 in the mornings.
Yep.
And now there's not Bundesliga on over the air. You have to get ESPN Plus. Serie A, you used to have it on BN, and then it went to ESPN Plus. So it's funny how that's kind of been handled differently, but it's going to become a growing conversation because it is going to be about the financials more than ever coming out of the pandemic as clubs and leagues try to catch up on what they've lost. So I don't know if that's going to go away. I think it's going to increase.
Do you think that was just from the notion of fans of Premier League teams were so used to seeing the marquee games and as many games as possible on the NBC platform, then they're pulling it away? Because if they had just done that first step initially, and say Peacock had been created 7 years ago, and they had just decided that they were going to do it like they're doing it now 7 years ago, do you think we'd be seeing this kind of blowback?
Probably not. Also, the Premier League's the higher profile one. I mean, Byrne says ESPN Plus for Bundesliga is the best thing ever. It's probably too good to be true. And there's fewer games on cable or streaming television because you don't have the FS1, the FS2 games like you used to. Maybe it would have been different if it had been from the beginning. I don't know. Maybe it's just because the Premier League has the largest fan base out of these leagues, and you're just hearing more of it right now. Maybe it's just new, and you're hearing more of it. I don't know. I don't think it's going away is the biggest thing. I don't think it's going away. I hope that when leagues do these deals, they do them with people who can provide a good service. ESPN Plus has been a good service for the leagues that it has bought the rights to. Flow FC was not. And teams who did deals with Flow FC failed their, supporters in a big way. So that did not work. You've got to make sure it's a viable one. You've got to make sure it's a solid one. And you saw with Serie A, I think, BN was one that got caught in this a little bit. When BN got dropped from a lot of cable systems, Serie A was like, well, we got to get out of here. And when our deal's up, we can't go back to them. Now, I think BN had to overpay to keep La Liga because it was the last big major thing they had because it kept them afloat, and they had to pay more to keep them. And La Liga said, okay, well, we'll do that. I don't know if they'll do it again unless BN increases its coverage or comes up with a way to bridge that gap somehow.
Chris Ashley with his League One thought of the day.
Okay.
Predictions for who Greenville Triumph will play in the final. Here's the scenarios, and I'll bring in the Halloween candy after the fact.
All right.
Richmond to control their destiny. Omaha, or Omadraw, as Chris calls them, must earn more points than Richmond today. North Texas need to win and the other two to lose. All three have home matchups. Richmond hosting Chattanooga. Omaha gets Fort Lauderdale, and North Texas gets Tormenta. That one is at 8:30 tonight.
So Omaha wins. I think North Texas might win, but I don't think it matters because I think Richmond wins.
Right. Here's your Halloween candy.
Okay.
Greenville on the road at OCB. In the last game that OCB will be playing in USL League One, OCB is a plus 546 at home. Greenville a minus 238 on the road, and that is at 1 o'clock. Richmond at home at City Stadium is a plus 118 against Chattanooga, who's a plus 198. Your draw is a plus 235.
Take Richmond.
Forward Madison and New England Revolution 2 are at 2100, 9 o'clock? 8 o'clock. Then Union Omaha and Fort Lauderdale. Union Omaha minus 159. Fort Lauderdale's a plus 344. North Texas a minus 119 going up against Tormenta. Tormenta's a plus 286.
Yeah, I think Richmond gets it done, and they end up coming to Greenville next weekend.
Yep, after the 1v1 that we had this week with Chris, he wanted to see Richmond after what he saw from Omaha last week out. So he wants Richmond to come to Legacy early next week.
I mean, it's in their hands. I think they get it done. So, yeah, I will pick Richmond to make the USL League One final. We'll see if that comes true. Your MLS schedule today, 3:30 on Univision, Miami and Orlando. Atlanta and D.C. kicks off just after 4. So Miami and Orlando probably kicks off just before 4 if it's on Univision. New York City and Montreal, Chicago and Red Bulls, Cincinnati and Minnesota, Philadelphia and Toronto, all at 7:30. I will be watching Chicago and the Red Bulls and somehow trying to cheer for the Red Bulls. 8 o'clock, Houston and Columbus. 8:30, Sporting Kansas City and the Colorado Rapids return to the field. RSL and Dallas at 9:30. 10 o'clock, Vancouver and San Jose. And tomorrow on ABC, El Tráfico number 75 this season with LAFC and the LA Galaxy. It'll probably be very, very dumb in hopefully fun ways.
Yeah, and speaking of adjustments with Halloween candy, Orlando City is still at plus 2.25. They have not gone closer to anything closer to a draw option. Inter Miami is a plus 112 at home.
I'm just not getting it. I'm not getting that at all. Take Orlando all day long in that one. Burned, one thing I don't understand is why ESPN puts weird Serie A games on ESPN this morning, Atalanta or somebody like that, rather than Bayern, Dortmund, et cetera. Doesn't make sense. I would agree. I wonder if it's in the contract. Yeah. I wonder if Serie A was able to get a certain number of games on regular linear TV. And I remember the Bundesliga one, them talking about them not putting a lot of games on TV. So I wonder if it became a inventory and contractual issue. Because, yeah, I'm with you. It doesn't make sense. If you can just pick something to put on, yeah, there's maybe some better picks.
Yeah. Other Halloween candy adjustments since we last looked at it. NYC is now a minus 256 at home. Montreal is now north of plus 600. And your draw is at plus 415. Philadelphia at home a plus 150 now. Toronto FC a plus 175 to win on the road. And Sporting's a minus 141. Colorado has grown up. They're now north of plus 350. San Jose is pretty much even money now on the road, going up against Vancouver on the road for a home game for Vancouver.
Do you have... yeah, that made sense. Do you have numbers on Kansas City, Colorado? Because there were not any on BetMGM.
Sporting a minus 141, Colorado plus 357, and your draw is basically a plus 300.
Okay. That feels about right, considering it. Just a couple more minutes. Nick says, don't give the good stuff for free, talking about ESPN's decisioning here. And there was some argument I saw for why the ESPN Plus for Bundesliga was better. It was all on the Plus, so you didn't have to have cable for the ESPN games, only needed the one service. Instead of, in their case, well, Nick's is talking about for the Premier League, instead of needing NBC Sports Network, and Peacock. I would assume that if you have NBC and NBC Sports, you'd have both. I don't think there'd be a situation where you wouldn't have NBC Sports if you have... Well, no, if you just have like a digital antenna or whatever, then yeah, you would need something else. But then you'd get NBC along the way. So I think you'd get those packaged whatever way, and you need Peacock. If Bundesliga, yeah, if it's all on ESPN Plus, if they don't throw games on ESPN, then true. All you need is the Plus, and you just pay your monthly subscription. I think maybe the next step would be something like, and I don't know how or why, I think it's probably years down the line, when the pricing goes up on these services, because you know it will, it always does. Yeah. I mean, if you're buying more rights to things, you're going to have to recoup somehow. So let's say ESPN Plus goes up to $9.99. Let's just throw it up to that high. If they offer a package like, oh, you just want the Bundesliga? Okay, then it would be, whatever, like the MLB extra innings type of thing or something. You just pay for that period. I wonder if they'd ever go to something like that. I do think it's possible. I don't know. I think the regular price would have to get up to a point where it makes sense to do it. Because right now it's so low. Like, why would you not do ESPN Plus and get all the other games if you just want the Bundesliga?
Right. Dan Graham in the Mesa discussion, he says, center back is our deepest roster spot. I'd be fine with the move as long as we're getting our money back, parenthesis, no COVID discount. Miles and Franco are the starters. Walks next, then Campbell and White, and we've got Nielsen currently at the twos if needed.
Potentially, yeah. It was, I don't think it was ever reported what the money worked out to be and what you got for LGP. We know you... Yeah, because he went through allocation, if I remember right. So you got more than $500,000 on paper for LGP. We don't know what was spent for Mesa. We don't know how those deals were connected, if they were. So getting your money back is a little bit of a hard one to actually rate. I agree, you don't want to take a loss on that deal. And I'm assuming that there would probably be that conversation of, hey, we need to make this work, because in a perfect world, you get enough out of it to where you can put it into allocation money and actually increase your salary cap with this move. That would be the perfect scenario. So I would assume that's what you're going to be shooting for here, because you were able to pull that off for Carlos Carmona, for example, where you got allocation money out of the deal. So I don't think it requires a massive transfer here. But, yeah, you want to get enough to where you can get some allocation money and increase your cap.
Yeah. Let's see. What else is going on the Twitch pitch before we go?
Jason Nix already triggered the blocked terms in the Twitch pitch, which is always good. Because he used Crazy Chinese League and Australian League in a comment, and that got the trigger going. Good stuff there, Nix. I would not have guessed that one would have pulled it off. He said ESPN Plus is great value because they have MLS, Serie A, Bundesliga, the Crazy Chinese League, and I think the Australian League. Did they? Yeah, they did have the Australian League. They've got the Danish League. They've got the Swedish League. Yep. They've got the ATLvDC in the Netherlands.
SPFL?
Yeah, and it looks like they're only going to show one game a week, which I don't like. I wish they'd just go ahead and put them all up. But I'm assuming the team's individual channels are probably more lucrative, or at least they think it might be. I don't know if it actually is. What else do they have? I want to say they've got something else that I'm forgetting. I don't know. I'll have to go back and check. I think they're getting the Russian League. I think that was talked about at one point. They were getting the Russian League. Yeah. So craziness. They have USL. Thank you, Kefsi. They have beach soccer from time to time. Thank you. They got all kinds of stuff. Burns says the Serie A contract explanation, forcing them to show some games on cable, makes a lot of sense, because the games they show are literally amongst the worst possible most weeks, because I think it's only in that one time slot. Now, I do think in the spring they've got more flexibility because they don't have the college football stuff. So in the fall, they're only taking the early time slot, and that's not your higher profile games in Serie A. In the spring, I think they showed some of the like 12 or 1 o'clock or even 3 o'clock kickoffs and more of the high profile games. I might be wrong. I might be misremembering that, but I thought they showed some different games in the spring.
Yeah, I thought they did, yeah. Once you got out of football season.
Yeah. I do think that it was a contractual thing because it doesn't really make sense otherwise. I think it was probably part of the deal that Serie A struck was, hey, we want X number of games to be on TV. And ESPN probably said, okay, well, then we're going to pay you less. And they said, okay, and they figured it all out. So, that maybe was what Serie A was going for here. Bundesliga might have just been, we'll take all the money you want to give us, and cool, we're good.
Yep.
Because I always read that they were very unhappy with the way Fox promoted them. And when Fox got out of the written game and away from the website stuff, I think that made a lot of sense because ESPN, I mean, all the auxiliary things they're doing. The Bundesliga gets talked about more on ESPN FC, probably gets talked about more on the overall ESPN family of networks worldwide. You have Derek Ray now writing a column for the website. You've got more stuff going that you can promote it more effectively. Fox just couldn't do those things.
Getting ready for the second half of El Clasico. Yellows for Nacho and Casemiro to keep an eye on. The goals on the board, 2 in the first 8 minutes from Ansu Fati and Valverde.
Yeah, that's kicking off on BN, second half, 1-1. We'll be on the radio at 3:30 for the Five Stripes Countdown. Kickoff just after 4 for Atlanta and D.C. I think Atlanta wins 2-0. I think they take care of business, and I think they do get those early goals that allow them to control the match and not expend too much energy and emotional energy in this one. You've got to take care of business as early as possible. If you're coming, be safe, be smart, wear your mask at all times, follow all of the protocols so we can hopefully get more people in the building as we go. But stay safe, be smart. Do everything that they ask you to do. For those of you who are coming and then on your way home afterwards, we'll have the full-time report on 92.9 and on radio.com for an hour after the final whistle. So Hope to be talking to y'all later. Lots of soccer all over the world to watch. I know I'll be on Twitter tonight with all of the games at 7:30 and 8 o'clock and really following that Chicago Red Bulls match in a big way. Y'all have a good rest of the day. Mucho platiel.
Mucho platiel.